Good afternoon, seniors. Again, my apologies for not being here 2 days in a row, but we will get through this lecture, and I should have two or at least one student up at the computer helping to run this. It should either be Janae or Treasure. So thank you, ladies. Please work together with everyone in the room to make sure that most of the room is ready to move on before you do. However, we cannot wait for every single person to get every single note down. If you fall behind, okay, be patient, leave a space in your notes. I will give you the link to the YouTube video, when I return, and you can fill in for yourself on your own time. So here we go. Impact of campaigns and campaign finance. So we're going to talk through campaign finance, think a little bit about how impactful are campaigns. Those are very complex, expensive things. They actually end up changing anyone's opinion. And then need to go over some vocabulary about other types of elections that do exist. They're not all just about electing someone. So the big idea for today, because of the great power elections have in changing the course of our country, campaigns are regulated to ensure the people's voice is fairly heard. Because of the great power elections have in changing the course of our country, campaigns are regulated by the government to ensure that the people's voice is fairly heard. So we'll get into that exact, how do we regulate campaigns? So, quick reminder, steps of presidential campaigns. I more want you to think about how long, complicated, and expensive this process is. So again, campaigns, especially for president, are long, complicated, and expensive. You have these in your notes. First, you have to declare that you're running, get enough people's signatures and support before you can even officially be even in the running to be a candidate. You have to campaign and win your party's nomination. That takes many months and lots of money. Be officially nominated by your party, and then you have a 3-month sprint from the conventions to the general election in November. So all of this takes lots of money. So campaign finance. When I say campaign finance, what I mean by that is where the money comes from. Where does the money come from to pay for these campaigns? Barack Obama and Mitt Romney on their own, so I'm not saying out of their own pockets, but if you just look at their campaigns by themselves, spent multiple millions of dollars in the campaign last year. Millions and millions of dollars. Mitt Romney fundraised and spent some of his own money. Millions of dollars was spent on a campaign, and what did he get? Nothing, because remember, he lost. So, where does all this money come from? Where do these millions of dollars come from to support a campaign? There's two categories of money. We have hard money and soft money. Hard money is money that we can easily trace who donated it, and there are limits. There are limits on hard money. Like hard limit, there's a finite amount of money that you're legally allowed to donate directly to a candidate. I'll say that one more time. There is a limit on the amount of money you can directly donate to a candidate. Because otherwise we've just turned into the wealthiest among us could, right? Give tons of money to a candidate, and that candidate would always win, because if you have more money, you're going to run a better campaign. So there are limits on the amount of money. So the hard money comes from individuals, corporations, and labor unions. So these last two are really just interest groups, right? Interest groups. And when interest groups are participating in trying to change the outcome of election, that is called electioneering. Let's not forget about that. So they can directly electioneer. By a corporation can donate money, though there is a limit. They can directly donate money to a candidate. The labor union can take some of their union dues and donate it directly to a candidate. Depending on the type of election, there's different limits. But right now, the hard money limit for an individual, no individual is legally allowed to donate more than $22,500 to one person's presidential campaign. So if I had been really passionate about Barack Obama getting reelected, the most I could spend of my own money directly going to his campaign was $2,500. However, there's this thing called soft money, right? Something is soft, it's flexible, you can get it through different holes, maybe holes in the rules, right? So soft money is donated by PACs, 501(c)s, and then political party donations. So a PAC stands for Political Action Committee. This is in your notes, but I'm going to go over it right now. A Political Action Committee. So Political Action Committee, you can donate. There's lots of complicated rules about how much money you can donate to a PAC, but the point is you can donate more money to a PAC than you can to an individual's campaign. And PACs can spend their money however they want. They can donate money to the candidate, or they can spend that money on yard signs that are not paid for by the candidate. They could spend it on, they could spend their money on television commercials that don't involve the candidate but still involve the election, right? 501(c)s are, the name comes from the tax code. It's the 501st paragraph, section C in our tax code. But 501(c)s are technically organizations you can donate money to that you don't have to pay taxes on. And 501(c)s, you don't necessarily need to know who donated the money. You do not necessarily need to report who donated the money. Then political party donations. So if I donate, there's no limit on how much money I can give to the Democratic Party right now. It's the middle of the election, it's the middle of a term. There's not a presidential election for many years coming, but I could donate tons of money to the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party is smart. They're going to save lots of that money and then use that money to help their candidate win. So I'm indirectly, soft money all three are ways to indirectly support your candidate. It also means you can donate more money. Soft money, you can indirectly support your candidate. There are ways to donate a lot more money. So, until 1974, there really were no laws about donating to campaigns. People weren't really paying that close attention to exactly where all the money was coming from. But in the early 1970s, something dramatic happened that made people not necessarily trust politicians and how they ran their campaigns. What I'm talking about is Watergate. The Federal Election Campaign Act, the FECA, happened post-Watergate, after the Watergate scandal, where Richard Nixon did some not ethical ways to win the presidential election. The Congress passed the Federal Election Campaign Act to try to clean up, so this is the goal, to try to clean up presidential campaigns and reduce the role of money in determining the winner. The goal was to clean up presidential campaigns, we'll talk about that in a second, as well as reduce the role of money in campaigns, because it was getting to a point where it's so obvious, whoever raises the most money wins the election. Now, it's still pretty true, but there are lots of limits on how you raise your money, so it forces people to actually involve everyone, or the attempt was to involve everyone, not just the wealthy. So what did the Federal Election Campaign Act, the FECA, create? So the first thing it did, it created the Federal Election Commission. So when there's a problem, the government creates a commission. The commission is a bunch of lawyers and officials that review the documents and make sure that if you are running for presidential office, that you are following the rules. So it's kind of a referee for campaigns, making sure money is being spent in a legal and ethical manner, and that you're not doing weird things to raise money. Creates the Federal Election Commission, who are essentially the referees of campaigns, making sure that both sides or all sides are playing fair. Next thing that the FECA did, it created the Presidential Election Campaign Fund. This is public funding. So technically, if you run for president and if you get 5%, if your party got 5% of the vote in the previous election, you are eligible for public funding for your campaign. So a lot of times presidential candidates will say, I'm not going to take any private dollars. I'm only going to win this election on public money. because there is this large pot of money that the Federal Election Commission controls. Somebody can run for president, and the government will help them pay for their campaign. Okay, where does the money come from for the presidential election campaign fund? When you start filing your federal income taxes on your own, you'll notice that kind of the last question that you fill out when you're filing your taxes is, would you like to donate to the presidential election campaign fund? Pay a little bit more on your taxes, put some money towards allowing anyone, not just the wealthy, not just the well-connected, to run for president. Lots of times people add $10, $15, but when millions of people do that, that adds up to a good amount of money. So it created public funding. Third thing it did, it required disclosure. So when you disclose something, you are making it public information. You're making it public information. So required disclosure, what I mean by that, and what they meant by that is that it required candidates to say where their donations were coming from. The Federal Election Campaign Act required candidates to legally create a document that says where all their money for their campaigns came from. So that way we could see who's influencing the elections. Are they getting it from a wide range of people? And finally, there were limits placed on contributions. That rule I stated on the previous slide about how much an individual can donate to a campaign, that happened in 1974. So they were trying to limit, making sure that no one person could overly influence, no one person or one group could overly influence an election. Legal limits on how much you can donate. How democratic, right? Problem, it didn't work. The FECA, all these things exist. Problem is that soft money still controls elections. It's still very easy to find loopholes in the rules. So from 1974 on, there were these rules in place, but they didn't do a good job of limiting the role money had in determining the winner in presidential elections. So, some holes in the rules. The McCain-Feingold Act attempted to limit soft money. So again, the McCain-Feingold Act in 2002, it's named after the two senators that supported it, John McCain and Russ Feingold. Not important that you know their names, but you know that the McCain-Feingold Act tried to limit soft money. So after the FECA, so the Federal Election Campaign Act, this category of soft money was created, right? Money that you got donated that didn't technically have to follow the contribution limits and didn't always have to be disclosed who you donated to. The McCain-Feingold Act tried to limit that. However, in 2010, the Supreme Court case Citizens United versus the FEC, remember FEC is Federal Election Commission, so this is the what for this court case, the Supreme Court ruled that parts of the McCain-Feingold Act were unconstitutional, that the federal government, in a violation of the First Amendment, in violation of the rights of free speech, could not limit how much an organization could donate to a campaign. McCain-Feingold tried to limit soft money from PACs. Okay, and Citizens United the Citizens United case said, if you're limiting soft money from PACs, you're essentially limiting that group of people's free speech. Money in an election, they determined was speech. You're limiting how much money someone can donate. You're essentially limiting how, quote, in a metaphorical sense, how loud they can speak. That violates the First Amendment. So the significance, the McCain-Feingold Act, the limits they placed on soft money essentially disappeared after 2010. So in the past 3 years, soft money has essentially become legal again. Thing I'd like you to think about. So, Treasurer Janae, if you could please pause once I'm done in a second. I want everybody to take about a minute. So, do corporations get free speech too? Should corporations, do corporations deserve free speech? Write down an answer. Give me some evidence. Give me some thoughts. We'll talk about it in discussion section tomorrow. All right, another loophole, another hole in the rules around limits on donating and overly influence a campaign. There's something called 527 groups. Again, the number simply relates to what part of our tax code, tax laws, talking about. But 527 groups, what do you need to know about those? 527 groups can spend an unlimited amount of money. They can spend an unlimited amount of money for political purposes as long as, this is important, as long as they do not officially endorse a candidate. We're going to look at some ads tomorrow about 527 groups. It's a little easier to explain when we have real examples, but 527 groups, you can donate an unlimited amount of money and you never have to say who your donors were. You do not have to disclose who donated the money to the 527 group, so essentially gives the person an excuse to donate an unlimited amount of money to a candidate, as long as the 527 group never says specifically who they are campaigning for. Again, we'll look at that loophole tomorrow, start it, and we will come back to it. So, all these millions of dollars are being spent months and months by the candidate and their campaign manager and their strategist and their loyal supporters. Does it actually impact anything? Well, there's two sides here. All right? This slide is why campaigns are powerful. The next one, I'm going to make it the counter argument. Campaigns aren't powerful. They're not significant. So, three arguments why campaigns are powerful. First, reinforcement, right? They reinforce voters' preferences for the candidates, right? Someone may have been wanting to vote for Barack Obama anyway, right? But the campaign, learning more about him, says, yeah, I absolutely want to vote for this guy. I'm for sure I'm going to vote for him, so it solidifies a vote. That's important, right? Comes along, if Mitt Romney may have convinced that person better, that person could have changed it, even though they were originally going to vote for Obama. So campaigns reinforce voters' preferences. Next, campaigns often activate voters, so the activation. Voters contribute money or ring doorbells where they might not have done something otherwise. It forces the campaign, says, this guy's about changing the country. All right, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to be active too. I'm going to become politically active in choosing the direction of my country, right? Getting people to contribute money, ring doorbells, I'm saying like go door to door, try to convince people. So they could activate voters that might not have done otherwise. And the next one, conversion. Obviously the root word there is convert, right? Convert. So sometimes campaigns can change a voter's mind. So before you know anything about the two candidates, Mitt Romney or Barack Obama, you say, I generally vote Republican, I'll go with Mitt Romney. But because Barack Obama did such a good campaigning, it actually converts. It changes your mind. So again, I'd like you to take in just a little bit, take a minute and write down an argument, so a statement with evidence, logical thoughts, about which of the above is the most important impact of campaigns. Go ahead and pause for a minute. Alrighty. So again, we're going to talk about that point and the previous point from the other side about corporations. Should they have free speech too? We're going to talk about that tomorrow. So please make sure you have a good thought in your notes. So, counter argument. Campaigns aren't as powerful as we think they are. 3 reasons why right here. First, selective perception. Most people in this day and age especially, with all the different forms of media out there, most people pay attention to the things they agree with and interpret the events according to their predispositions. And what I mean by that, people are going to see an event, and they're going to see it through the way they've been socialized to understand that event. Right? Narrowcasting. Narrowcasting happens all the time now, right? If I really like the Republican Party, I might end up watching Fox News a lot. They're going to say positive things. That's where I'm probably going to hear my candidate campaigning, right? Selective perception. Anytime Barack Obama comes on the television or I see an ad, I might say, I'm not going to vote for him, and I change the channel, right? I'm going to only hear the things that I want to hear. Lots of adults are that way. I'm sure you'll agree, right? Second one, party identification influence voting behavior. So we've talked about it before, right? One of the tasks of political parties is that they cue voters. So it's simply the person being a Republican or a Democrat that gets somebody to vote for him. Does the campaign even matter? No. They're going to just vote for that. Lots of people are just going to vote for the Democrat because they are Democrat, or just going to vote for the Republican because they're Republican. Doesn't matter how much money you spend, that person's not changing their political identification. And finally, we will talk about this a lot more in our Congress unit, but the idea that incumbents have an advantage. An incumbent is anyone who currently holds office. Again, an incumbent is anyone who currently holds this office. Incumbents have the advantage of name recognition and have a track record. So Barack Obama had an advantage going into last year's election because he was already president. Lots of people thought, he's doing a pretty good job with the cards he's been dealt. We'll let him stay on the job for another 4 years to finish what he started. He has an advantage simply by being an incumbent. It doesn't matter that he campaigned at all. He had his track record to campaign on. His campaign or Mitt Romney's campaign didn't necessarily affect anyone. So, are campaigns effective? Yes, but they're not the end-all be-all. They're not necessarily going to change everyone's mind. So, finally, we just need to get some basic vocabulary down, and I want to make you aware that there are actually types of elections besides the choosing who your leaders are going to be. There's 3 different types, special kinds of elections. But please note, all 3 of these happen at the state level. Recall, referendum, and initiative do not happen at the national level. They only exist for state offices and state laws and state elections. Okay? The first one, to recall. You've probably heard recall before. Toyota has to recall some car. There's been a toy recall. That's when they take something out from the public, right? Take it off the shelves. So recall is when someone who currently holds an office, because they're doing such a terrible job or angering so many people, that the individuals in that state get enough petitions and they hold a recall election, right? So where that candidate is essentially campaigning to keep their job, right? They redo the election. A recall election is when enough people get angry, they redo the election because the person they first elected was doing a crummy job, want a do-over, right? Next one, a referendum. So referendum and initiative are pretty similar. So I'm going to give you some examples. A referendum is when a state legislature or the governor does not want to make the decision about whether or not to institute a policy. When a state legislature doesn't want to make the decision about whether yes or no we're going to make this bill into a law. So instead, they leave it up to the people. The decision about a bill becoming a law is left up to the people. So an example, in Colorado last year, we read about this briefly in our article and discussion section last week. Colorado, the state legislature did not want to have to vote or didn't think it was their right to vote on whether or not to legalize marijuana in the state of Colorado. So they put it as a ballot referendum. The ballot referendum. It was left up to the people. The people voted yes or no. It ended up winning. More than 50% of the residents of Colorado voted that yes, we're going to make marijuana legal in the state of Colorado. And it then became a law. Not because the state legislature did anything, because it was left up to the voters. Referendum, the state legislature chooses, we're going to leave it up to the people. People make the decision. So initiative. Think about your advisors telling you since you were a freshman, you need to take more initiative. You need to take responsibility for it. So initiative, so starting something, right? With initiative, what it is, it's the citizens start the process of a bill becoming a law and take it all the way. The state legislature is not involved. What is it? Citizens craft bill and vote it into law. And then vote on that bill. Okay? It doesn't have to deal with the state legislature at all. It is democracy at its purest. So an initiative. In 2008, there was an initiative started by enough conservative individuals in California. A few years earlier, the California state legislature had passed a law legalizing same-sex marriages, but in 2008, enough conservative people got enough signatures to start and craft a bill that would then make same-sex marriages in California illegal. So it started with a group of conservative people, and because of the way they worded the bill, the way it appeared on the ballot, and through a very strong and expensive campaign for a brief time from 2008 until this summer, same-sex marriages were actually illegal in the state of California because of an initiative. So conservative citizens decided that they wanted to change a law. They got enough signatures. They got it put on the ballot, and they made same-sex marriages illegal. However, through some technicalities, the Supreme Court this summer ruled that actually Proposition 8, the initiative, was illegal. So we have recall, which is a redo because an elected official is doing such a crummy job. A referendum, when the ultimate decision about a bill becoming a law is left up to the people, not necessarily the state legislator. And the initiative, where the people take responsibility for making a law into their own hands. So all three of these are examples of what American ideal. We're giving the people the power to decide or to redecide things. Please write it down. All of these are great examples of which American ideal. All right, so our reflection question. Does the public have a right to know who donates what to political campaigns? So remember that the FECA, the Federal Election Campaign Act, said that we have to know who donates to what campaign, but through soft money, through different loopholes, people can actually donate large sums of money secretly to candidates' campaigns to try to influence an election. Does the public have a right to know who donates to political campaigns? Please explain your answer for either using the American ideal of democracy and liberty. So there's two sides you can take. One side is the idea of democracy, the other one is the idea of liberty. Please answer the question, do we have the right to know who donates to political campaigns? The detailed paragraph in your notes.